What did we learn from the demo version that was up for a couple of days? Stay tuned for a full analysis of the newest developments. I'll talk about gameplay, masteries and skills, monsters, weapons and mechanics. In my previous video I lost my marbles because the developers postponed the early access release. After I heard that the early access was announced to be released this winter, I was so hyped, and like a little kid that's waiting for Christmas to arrive, I counted the days to see Titan Quest 2. My favorite game ever, Titan Quest 1, would get a successor, imagine that. Then we learned that things had changed and we would not get the early access this winter. What I did not know was that the Grimlar Games developers gave us something really good to make up for it, a playable demo version of Titan Quest 2. This demo was only up for a couple of days and is now not accessible anymore, sadly. The demo was mainly to show the people how actually playing the game feels, as well as showing the masteries with a bunch of abilities. The demo version went from the very beginning of the game until the first boss, a griffin. Its defeat signals that the prologue is over, and with it the demo version. What we saw was a very interesting showcase on how the game plays, how it feels to cast abilities and use weapons on monsters. We got a decent look on the level design with its marvelous landscape and the handcrafted world with its secrets to discover on every corner. The monsters felt kind of cool too. But let's start with the gameplay. Of course, it felt a little clunky and slow at the beginning because you start at level 0 with no abilities except a basic attack and a dash. With the acquisition of the first ability, the gameplay makes a drastic change. A basic tier 1 skill, like Call Lightning of Storm Mastery, makes you a killing machine. As you progress, mobs get stronger, so you have to adjust by leveling up to use new abilities or reinforce the ability you used with new modifiers. You notice every level up with your stats increasing, which in turn adds to your damage. The skills looked super interesting. I don't know where to start. The monsters had decent ragdolls, which seemed right about perfect to me. A leveled up Call Lightning skill made the enemies fly off violently. Some boars that you have killed on a slope rolled downhill with correct physics. The fighting, be it with weapon attacks or with skills, felt really fluent after some time. The story with the NPC Antinoe, who is your mentor, is also well made. With a few short lines of dialogue, we really get the feeling of a master-student relationship that has a lot of depth in it. When you reach the first shrine to select your first mastery, Antinoe notices that Goddess Nemesis took notice of you and your awakening. She says something like, "Oh snap, I got to take care of something, you take out the griffin, I know you can do it." Nemesis seemed to have only waited for you to get your powers, because right afterwards she starts the hunt. Antinoe also asks herself, what can a child have done wrong to justify the god's wrath? Right after killing the griffin boss, Nemesis starts to hunt you and Antinoe gets killed. I get a hunch that you as the player are a half-god, in other words the offspring of a god and a mortal, possibly of the god husband of Nemesis, who cheated on her with a normal human woman. It produced a kid which is you. This is why Nemesis is out to kill you. That's pretty much the only explanation that comes to mind. The gameplay felt good and well polished, so let's talk about the masteries and its abilities. This was also a core aspect of the demo version, because Titan Quest 2 is an ARPG. A good portion of this game type you spend fighting monsters, and for that you need skills and abilities. I only played the demo for 3 hours in total, so I didn't have enough time to test all the skills, but a majority of them. Somehow all the skills felt powerful, except for that one AoE warfare skill, Sweeping Strike, where you swung around in a circle motion. The damage of that one felt not more than a regular melee attack. I liked all the other skills, especially those from Storm and Earth Mastery. That Lava Orb ability, for example, with some modifier that adds some strike damage, feels really powerful. 1 or 2 Lava Orb bombardments on a mob took them out for good. Also, in typical Titan Quest fashion, you could cast abilities far away on any part that is visible on your screen. I loved that about Titan Quest 1 as well. Notice that just like in the first game, you didn't get any XP for killing monsters far away. Call Lightning of Storm Mastery was very powerful with the right modifiers that increased your damage. I didn't like the Ice Shards skill that much. It was powerful alright, but I already hated that skill in the base game. I gotta admit that it was not useless like in Titan Quest 1. The skill Lightning Bolt was where the fun begins. This one was fun to use, especially with the modifier that let your bolt spread between enemies, damaging a whole group. For Earth Mastery, the Lava Orb skill and that skill where you gushed some lava towards the enemies felt really powerful. Forgive me if I don't have the names, I only recall it from memory and had only measly 3 hours to play the demo. It basically didn't really matter which skill you used, be it the Earthquake skill or Call Lightning, everything was super powerful and blasted the mobs away. Notice that skills didn't have any cooldown times in this demo, so you could spam them left and right until your mana pool was depleted. Warfare Mastery is also an interesting one. I don't know what to make of it at this point. It seems to be a very versatile mastery for specific builds, especially those that rely on physical damage and basic attacks. Good old Leap and Slam were there and okay, but those two felt underwhelming when compared to flashy skills like Lightning Bolt that did a lot of damage. The tier 1 skill Heavy Attack also felt really boring to me, but that's okay, the mastery needs a basic skill like this. War Horn is an interesting skill. In the base game Titan Quest 1, this skill stunned the enemies, but here you can just debuff the enemies. Seems very interesting for specific builds. We are not done with skills yet. The basic attack and dodge are also skills that you could level up and put modifiers on. For the basic attack, there were mainly modifiers for ranged attacks, and for the dodge, there were interesting modifiers, like dealing cold damage on each dodge 2 times. You also had a default ability that shields you for a brief period on usage, using mana to make a barrier to reduce taken damage. This shield ability seems really cool in combination with channeling spells like Earthquake, or when you expect to take a lot of damage from a big attack from a boss, or even if you get surprised by a group of enemies that surrounds you. We need to talk about the passive skills for each mastery too. They were really helpful. You could focus on your build a bit more. For example, a melee based hero could focus on physical damage and damage reduction. A caster hero could either max out their mana regeneration or the spell damage. Let's talk about the monsters. The crabs, boars, eagles, snakes and wolves all felt really cool to fight. They had good sound design and unique skills that made sense. Later on we got skeletons, human bandits and spiders, each with their unique set of abilities. They were really fun to fight. The boss of the prologue, the Griffin, was also fun to fight. It was a bit challenging, but not too difficult if you knew the attacks and used your dodge wisely. The boss felt intimidating and also like a real challenge, fitting as the first hurdle that the hero has to overcome. Right after the boss fight, you need to dodge Nemesis attacks, which is such a cool sequence. It's harder than it looks to react in a split second, but this is also super fun. We get some new enemies for a brief period, the Servants of Nemesis, which are some ghost-like skeletons that teleport around. Awesome monster design. The weapons were as we expected: daggers, swords, scythes, axes, spears, shields, bows and staves. I was positively surprised that they included the Xephos sword. It was the beginning of the game, so weapons really didn't matter, you just equipped whatever did the most damage for your build. Ranged attacks from bows and staves felt really weak in comparison to melee weapons. You were better off to cast a ranged spell than shoot a basic attack with your staff. I'm sure that this was only because of the limited scope of the demo version, and later in the game this will change. I'm sure I will make a build that specializes in staff basic attacks with multiple projectiles. Last but not least, let's tackle the topic of game mechanics that we learned in this demo. It seems weapons don't have damage over time types on them, such as bleeding or burn damage. The exception here surely is poison, which is a primary damage type. The damage over time types like bleeding, chill, burn, etc. are called ailments now, and it seems you can increase the ailment chance for skills to actually deal the damage over time debuff on enemies. For example, if you have the skill Call Lightning and put in a modifier that increases the ailment chance of the spell, you basically deal lightning damage and have the chance to deal additional electro burn damage. This concept is something different and it feels kind of cool. We got the system of damage scaling. You do that by increasing your primary attributes. A combination of those determines your value in your secondary attributes, and those scale the damage for various types. It is likely that this damage scaling is the same for the damage over time counterparts. However, it is still a bit unclear how other types of damage, such as vitality or spirit damage, are scaled. We need some better tooltips for that. Vitality or spirit damage were only in some modifiers and skills in the demo. What I liked was the detail screen for your character's damage, resistances, armor and so on. The inventory was also great. It felt really intuitive to compare items and sell them fast. Sorting the inventory also worked very well. The most important mechanic change when comparing Titan Quest 1 and Titan Quest 2 are the potions. You don't need to buy or pick up potions all the time. Your health potion replenishes just by attacking mobs. If you fight a big group, you can chuck a health potion preemptively right at the start of the fight, because it will regenerate anyway during fighting. Also, mana potions regenerate over time, so you basically always have health and mana ready. This makes the game a lot more accessible. In Titan Quest 1, you needed for most melee characters some form of life leech mechanic to stay alive during fights. In Titan Quest 2, staying alive is much easier. Everyone has health potions just from fighting. You can use dashes to jump away from dangerous abilities from monsters, and also use the barrier ability that every hero has. There is some life leech in form of vitality drain damage, albeit unclear on how to scale this type of damage. I liked the tooltips and explanations for mostly everything. In some areas, I would like to have even more tooltips, for example at the damage type screen. From what I have seen in the demo, it also seemed to be much easier to make hybrid builds. A melee fighter that goes in and freezes mobs, then smashes them with a big axe or something. Seems much easier to pull off when your mana is easy to keep up. For the base game of Titan Quest 1, good hybrid builds were very delicate and sometimes insanely difficult to pull off. Sometimes with very specific items that converted all your weapon damage to elemental damage. In Titan Quest 2, you will have the ability to look for the right modifiers to specialize your builds for anything you wish for. I absolutely love that. It is obvious that the developers need some more time to prepare the early access. That is fine, I'm looking forward to everything. It's better to not have a date when it will come out, in my opinion, because the fans' disappointment is always bad when the deadline can't be met. The demo was really awesome and I'm fully back on the hype train. What about you? Did you play the demo and how was your experience? Let me know in the comments. In any case, thanks for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.